The summer of 2025 arrives, but instead of the usual warmth and optimism that the season brings, a sense of unease settles over the world's major economies. Across bustling cities and quiet towns alike, people feel the tension in the air, an uncertainty that stretches far beyond the weather. This year, the transatlantic relationship is defined not by cooperation, but by a chilling trade war that casts a long shadow over both sides of the ocean. Cargo ships sit idle at ports, and once busy streets seem subdued as the world braces for economic fallout. President Trump, having returned to the White House, wastes no time in making his mark. He reignites old tensions with Europe and Canada, imposing a new wave of aggressive tariffs. These measures, he claims, are necessary to protect American industries and workers, but they come at a steep diplomatic cost, pushing historic alliances to the very brink of collapse. Under the banner of his America First doctrine, Trump frames global trade as a zero-sum contest. He demands steep tariffs on steel, automobiles, and agricultural goods, insisting that only tough action will force America's partners to negotiate on his terms. The message is clear: compromise is off the table. European and Canadian leaders, however, see these moves not as negotiation, but as outright economic coercion. They warn that such tactics threaten to destabilize the global economy, and they vow to respond in kind, preparing their own countermeasures and rallying international support. The stakes could not be higher. Over $2 trillion in annual trade and millions of jobs on both continents now hang in the balance. From factory floors to financial markets, the uncertainty ripples outward, affecting businesses large and small, and leaving workers anxious about their futures. Tensions have reached a fever pitch. Threats and counter-threats fly across the Atlantic, with diplomats scrambling to find common ground. Protesters gather outside government buildings demanding action, while negotiators behind closed doors struggle to keep talks from breaking down entirely. This is no minor policy dispute. It's a seismic event, shaking the foundations of boardrooms, factories, and governments from Berlin to Ottawa. The ripple effects are felt in every sector, from manufacturing to agriculture, and the uncertainty is rewriting the rules of global commerce. Around the globe, people watch anxiously as the standoff unfolds. Newsrooms buzz with updates, and families gather around televisions, wondering if these longtime allies can find a way to step back from the edge of economic war, or if the world is witnessing the start of a new era of division and uncertainty. At the heart of Trump's new trade strategy lies a bold and controversial idea: a universal 15% minimum tariff on all imported goods entering the United States. This isn't just a tweak to existing policy. It's a sweeping doctrine that would fundamentally reshape how America does business with the world. Under this doctrine, no trade deal, no matter how long-standing or friendly, can fall below that 15% threshold. It's a hard line, designed to force trading partners to the table on America's terms. The policy was first put to the test in negotiations with Japan, where it quickly became clear that the U.S. was serious about enforcing this new standard. Now the 15% minimum tariff has become the centerpiece of ongoing talks with major partners like Europe and Canada, signaling a dramatic shift in U.S. trade priorities. The White House argues that this approach will breathe new life into American manufacturing, making it more competitive by raising the cost of imported goods. Supporters say it could bring back jobs that have been lost to overseas competition, and help rebuild industries that once formed the backbone of the U.S. economy. But the pressure is intense. The European Union, facing the threat of even steeper tariffs, reluctantly agreed to the 15% baseline on $900 billion worth of goods, barely avoiding a punishing 30% rate that could have sparked a trade war and sent shockwaves through global markets. Canada, too, finds itself in a precarious position. Trump keeps the threat of even higher tariffs looming over America's northern neighbor, risking severe disruption to the tightly woven cross-border supply chains that support millions of jobs on both sides. For Trump, the goal isn't just minor adjustments or incremental changes. He's aiming for a total overhaul of America's trade relationships, pushing for bilateral deals that put U.S. interests first, and demanding that partners accept terms set in Washington. The 15% tariff is his chosen hammer, a blunt instrument meant to force compliance. But wielding it so aggressively risks shattering decades of trust, cooperation, and economic integration with America's closest allies. Now, America's allies face a stark and difficult choice: accept the new U.S. terms or brace themselves for economic pain, uncertainty, and the possibility of a fractured global trading system. Canada and the European Union have stood their ground, refusing to yield to President Trump's aggressive tariff threats. Instead of backing down, both have chosen to defend their economic interests and the principles of fair trade, even as tensions rise across the Atlantic. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has made it clear that Canada will not accept an unfair deal, even if it means facing short-term economic pain. He's emphasized that standing up for Canadian workers and industries is more important than giving in to pressure, and his government has rallied public support for a firm response. In response to U.S. tariffs, Canada has already imposed its own countermeasures, targeting American goods and sending a strong message that it will not be intimidated. Canadian factories and businesses are adapting, determined to weather the storm and protect their livelihoods. Across the Atlantic, Europe has been equally resolute. The announcement of a 15% tariff deal sparked outrage throughout the continent. French Prime Minister Bayrou called it a dark day for Europe, while German Chancellor Merz warned that the new tariffs could inflict severe and lasting damage, especially on the vital European auto sector, which employs millions. European leaders now find themselves in a difficult position, caught between the risk of capitulating to U.S. demands and the threat of even harsher tariffs if they resist. The stakes are high, and every decision is weighed carefully, as the future of European industry and jobs hangs in the balance. Their reluctant acceptance of the deal is not a sign of surrender, but rather a calculated strategic retreat. By staying united, they hope to buy time, regroup, and prepare for the next phase of negotiations, all while signaling to the world that they will not be easily bullied. This united front from Canada and Europe complicates President Trump's plans, transforming what he hoped would be a quick victory into a prolonged and unpredictable battle of wills. The world is watching as these economic heavyweights clash over the future of global trade. On the streets and in boardrooms, Canadians and Europeans alike are refusing to be passive. Protesters demand action, while business leaders strategize to protect their interests. Both sides are determined to defend the global trade system from what they see as an existential threat. As the Transatlantic alliance faces its toughest test yet, the resolve of Canada and Europe will shape not just their own futures, but the future of international cooperation and economic stability for years to come. $2 trillion in transatlantic trade is at risk, an economic lifeline for millions of jobs. Tariffs act as a tax on this system, raising costs, disrupting supply chains, and threatening jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. Iconic industries like aerospace and automotive are directly in the crosshairs. European carmakers face slashed profits, impacting American workers and consumers with higher prices. The ripple effects touch nearly every sector. Beyond money and jobs, the real loss is trust in a stable global economic order. Trump's actions have replaced predictability with chaos, making companies wary of long-term investment. The erosion of trust may be the most lasting wound of this trade war. Boeing, once a symbol of U.S. manufacturing, now finds itself a casualty of the trade war. Tariffs and retaliation have exposed its global supply chain, making it vulnerable to rivals like Airbus. The threat of 25% tariffs on aircraft parts nearly crippled Boeing's production and risked major sales, including a $500 million Ryanair order. Even after a zero-tariff deal on aircraft, the uncertainty has already damaged Boeing's prospects. China, a key market, is shifting orders to Airbus and domestic competitors in response to U.S. policies. Already reeling from production and safety issues, Boeing's losses have deepened, while Airbus gains ground. Boeing's plight is a cautionary tale of how quickly global leaders can fall when free trade is upended. The diplomatic backlash to Trump's trade offensive has been swift and severe. Canadian PM Carney stands firm, refusing to accept a bad deal despite economic risks. In Europe, French PM Bayrou calls the deal a dark day, echoing widespread frustration and mistrust. German Chancellor Merz warns the tariffs will still hurt Germany's economy, especially autos. These leaders are forced to negotiate under duress, knowing their industries will suffer. Their statements mark a rupture in the Western alliance. America's partners are no longer silent. Open dissent from G7 leaders signals a dramatic shift. Unity has given way to division and mistrust. The West's approach to global challenges is now fractured by economic confrontation. Trump's tariffs, meant to protect U.S. jobs, are hitting American workers and consumers hard. Higher import costs squeeze manufacturers, forcing layoffs, price hikes, or delayed investments. The aerospace sector, once a U.S. export powerhouse, now risks losing jobs as Boeing's competitiveness erodes. For families, the 15% tariff means everyday goods, Cars, wine, medicines cost more. Higher prices act as a tax on household budgets, slowing the consumer-driven economy. Job losses ripple through supply chains from Midwest machine shops to West Coast tech firms. The trade war creates economic anxiety for workers who were promised protection. The reality tariffs threaten the very jobs and prosperity they were meant to save. Key tariff shockwaves extend far beyond aerospace, hitting autos, pharmaceuticals, and more. German automaker Audi has cut its revenue outlook, citing the 15% US tariff, hurting workers in both Germany and the US. The pharmaceutical industry faces $19 billion in new costs, raising drug prices for Americans and stalling innovation. Even small European wine and spirits producers risk being priced out of the US market. The new trade framework offers some relief for select goods, but leaves many sectors exposed. The uncertainty itself is damaging, making businesses hesitant to invest or expand. Broad tariffs act as a sledgehammer, not a scalpel, hurting entire industries, not just bad actors. The global economy's intricate ties mean a trade war quickly spreads pain far and wide. The US-EU deal has averted immediate disaster, but it's a fragile truce, not a lasting peace. Trump gives the deal only 50 odds, and key disputes remain unresolved. Tensions with Canada are high, with threats of even steeper tariffs and no resolution in sight. Prolonged uncertainty is eroding business confidence and forcing companies to rethink investments. The trust that underpinned Western trade is shattered. Europe and Canada are seeking new partners. This strategic pivot could permanently reshape global trade, leaving the US more isolated. The coming months are critical. Only real diplomacy and compromise can prevent further damage. The Western alliance stands at a crossroads. Its future depends on choices made now.